How is up, everyone? It's your boy, a big-ass fire! And today, we will analyze the Muspell units and Garen. So before we start talking about the Muspell units themselves, let me go on a big-ass rant about the duel skills they come with and their impact on the arena. I'll talk about the bad first, and then the good after, if you actually make it that far. So the reason why I didn't make a video about the skills right away when the data mine was initially out a week ago was that I was actually rather angry at such a thing. I mean, think about it. I've only been talking about how I like to see all sorts of weird units in the arena without the restrictions of the whole BST BS and high SP skills. You know, I'd love it if the arena was more like an arena, where all sorts of different units and heroes that Fire Emblem had to offer would show up instead of the usual, Zelgius and Robin meal, jerking each other off in the corner with their rally skills. However, when the time came and they finally offered a quote-unquote solution, it was this? You know, never mind having to give up a valuable A slot to gimp your favorite units, or the fact that they currently only offer these skills to 2 classes. No! The problem I have with these skills is that they're basically acknowledging the problem with a band-aid solution. They know it's there, and the very existence of these skills meant that they have absolutely no plans at all to actually fix the arena, but would rather you shell out money for these things to stay quote-unquote competitive. Competitive? For what? A fucking crown? You serious, bro? You think your mom's gonna care? You honestly going to tell me that random people on the street will actually care if you wore crowns on top of crowns on top of crowns on top of crowns like a clown in Fire Emblem Heroes? No! What? You think they're just gonna walk over to you and get on their knees and suck you dry? No! What kind of Razuli logic is this? You know, it may sound really weird coming from me since I spent a ton of money in this game, but everything I've been doing in this game is within plan, and I have much to gain from it. I couldn't give two shits about crowns, and if I had never been a Fey tuber, I would have never even spent money on this game, or at least that much money on this game. The only reason why I have them in the first place is because, you know, I just so happen to have these units on hand. That's the only reason why I have these crowns that I have right now. But I would never, ever spend money on new heroes every 2 weeks. That's just not right. Especially since you need to plus 10 them in order to actually get any. Now, I'm a man who plays favorites, so I would use units that I like to use. So, you think that dangling the urgency to get all the crowns in the game is going to sell me? Fuck that! That's not gonna happen, pal! You know, it's funny, because I've heard a similar system in a game called Dungeons and Dragons. No, that's actually cool. Right, Puzzles and Dragons, where you gain crowns for being competitive, and they show up next to your name or whatever. Just like how we have now in Feng. I think they even show you a number. Now, don't quote me on this, because I've never actually played the game. I just heard it from other people, but from what they said, it makes sense. But anyway, so these crowns basically creates an urgency to these whales, and it's like, oh, well, I better spend as much money as I can so I can have tons of crowns to show off how cool I am. Well, you know, it's all fine and dandy, but what if, you know, say said super whale has a bad day? What if their phone got stolen? It broke. What if they couldn't pay the bill? It happens. These things happen to people. They don't have money and they still do this. Don't be like that. Be like me. Have tons of money and spend. See, I wouldn't even call that responsible. No, that's still really stupid. But at the very least, you're not homeless. Anyway, so yeah, what if they couldn't pay the bill? What if some real life events took them away? Well, then we have a problem. All of a sudden, instead of 100 crowns, you have 99. And because there's no way for you to gain that crown back, or at least not currently, this actually drives people crazy. It drives some people crazy. And when that happens, you know, people quit over this. You know, I've heard things like that before. You know, what's the point of collecting it anymore? You know, I wasted all this effort to try to get all these crowns to make sure I have, like, the maximum number of crowns, and then something happened. You know? It's gonna drive your OCD, ADHD, whatever, DDD, crazy. And, you know, that's it. You know, it might sound utterly stupid to you. And it is. It is really stupid. So you can see that there was absolutely no reason to bring it here to Fire Emblem Heroes, because this isn't a competitive game. You can't just force people to spend money with some arbitrary goals like that. There's no skill in slapping some useless skill like duel skills or duel rallies or whatever. Merge your heroes to gain extra points. You know, life was so much simpler with the tier 20 system. People would just drop in, you know, it wouldn't be a big deal. You know, alright, okay. Never mind all that. I mean, alright, I can stomach power creep. It's a necessary evil. Well, except for the part that they've kind of been overdoing it lately, you know, like Death Blow 4. It makes you wonder, alright? It makes you wonder, what is the problem? Is the game actually dying? Are they trying to cash in as hard as they can before it dies? Or maybe the employees of Intelligence System just wants to go on a vacation to Mars. Alright, okay, alright. So, all of a sudden, you know, I've got these power creep skills. Wait a minute, I get all these powerful power creep skills, but, you know, when you think about it, hey, I can't even use them, because the A slot that was meant for them got taken away because of these dueling skills. Well, shit. Isn't that quite a paradox? You know, BST was supposed to be a way to balance different unit classes. You have armor that are fat and slow, while you have cavalry that are swift and fast, range attack units that has to endure lower BST because their range. It's just how the game was originally balanced. Alright, you know, that's fine, I can get that. But now, that system is being used as a measurement of skill, heavily favored towards armor. Quote-unquote skill, alright? Just using those give you higher scores. Yeah, alright, okay. So, then their marketing strategy next is, alright, so they're fat and slow? No problem! Alright, now you have armor march, and armored boots. So now you can move 2 spaces, through forest, no problem. Oh, they can't double because all their BST went into their defense? No problem, bro, got you covered! Here's a bold fighter! It's like, what happened to the other classes? Is this game Armored Emblem Heroes? I mean, yeah, okay. With these dueling skills, ranged units are in the same arena bin. Great! Except armor can reach 175 and still keep their A skills. You know, at the very least, I would have preferred if they just released some kind of seal. At the very least, a universal seal that gave them set BST increase. But nah, Emperor Hirohito needs a yacht inside of his yato, yeah? Still, after a few days of playing my single-player games, I calmed down and I thought about it a bit. And I was like, hey, wait a minute. What does that even have to do with me? Or others who don't even care about the arena? The only thing about this that is truly troubling is the principle. But at the end of the day, you know, it's only just affecting one game mode. I can still make a show out of my units by using Arena Assault. You know, it doesn't matter. And I mean, it's not like these things, okay? At its core, it's not like those things don't help free-to-play players. So that instead of having to be forced to use the likes of Sheena or Gwendolyn, they can still use their favorite plus 10 units. I mean, at the end, the loss of certain game mechanics and stats do suck, but you have other heroes that can cover for that. And, you know, with things being the way they are, unless, you know, you decide to quit the game, there really isn't much left to do except to adapt. So, here's a couple things. Firstly, with the arena being a babysitting mode as it is now, which is also pretty goddamn awful, but that's another can of worms for later. Your cheerleaders, they don't really need to do anything except maybe stand around and maybe deal a couple bits of damage from time to time. Everything pretty much lies in how much you can buff the current unit of the season. So one way of putting that HP to use is, you can use it in Infantry Pulse or Panic Ploy. So I don't know if I mentioned this before, but all of my current Infantry Dancers, save for Ninian, all have plus HP IVs, so that they can either panic or provide Infantry Pulse. I figure that since they don't actually fight, what's the point of their other stats, except maybe to take a hit and survive? Higher scoring arena units will all have rallies, so your Panic Ploy will be the death of them, as it's very unlikely for opposing units to stack HP. So with Panic Ploy being readily available thanks to Volter and Garen, if you don't really care for them, it's a good way to put them to work. Second, despite its importance that, there are many units in the game that don't actually have to worry about their A slot all that much, and some even benefit from having extra HP. Besides the aforementioned Panic Ploy, fast characters with tons of HP like Carol will deal excessive damage from health loss, while characters like Nino doesn't even care about the A slot all that much thanks to Blade Tome. And not to mention, healers! Healers have lived for many millennia without a reasonable A slot, and with the 6 Paths of Pain Plus, you can support the team by heavily weakening your opponent for the arena hero to take out. And characters like Marth are basically buff bots anyway, so their combat prowess means nothing at all. All they have to do is stand there and drive people. Thirdly, while the BST increase does give a rather significant boost in the extremes, each bin is only 5 BST. It's like, 0.5 score for an individual unit? So for things like infantry and the likes, it's not that big of an increase, and you can actually get by without needing it. That's all there is to it. The main thing that still matters the most is how much you merge your unit. And finally, though you might think that, seeing dancers in the higher tier might be a bad thing, armor tends to fall apart once they get danced further away. Everything else that would have been troublesome with dancers is already available in the lower tiers. So to be perfectly honest, this can only help your dancers in the upper tier arena, especially if you have a unit that uses like a healer that doesn't have to worry about counterattacks or wind sweep or Sakei's blessing. You can freely abuse these skills if you have a dancer on hand. Your dancers that you control will be infinitely stronger than anything the AI could put up. But anyway, I will still send feedbacks to Intelligent System. I spent a ton of money on this game, so maybe my opinion might weigh a bit more. Yeah, right. Perhaps these skills are a result, maybe, of such feedbacks. I wish they'd just fix the whole damn system altogether, but I guess there's still something, I can only hope for these skills to be more widespread instead of just tying it down to good and beloved units. I just got another idea. It'd be really nice, It'd be really nice if you could actually earn duel manuals from quests or something, or defeating a powerful foe. See, now that would be cool. Or at least being able to buy them, like the BK value meal, or like $10 in the shop or something. Sacking a perfectly good character for a bit of points in the arena just doesn't sit well with me. But alright, well, now that I've spent a million years talking about my thoughts on the duel skills, let's get on with the characters. First, my personal favorite, Laevatein Helbindi. Laevatein here is a one tough bastard. Much like Sephiel and Arden, he tosses away all of his speed to maximize all of his other stats. A real min-max beast, this one. I think that the only infantry heroes that you can summon who can match such a thing are Hawkeye and the Giraffe Girl, Sophia. Unfortunately though, the speed isn't exactly leaving room for much imagination either. Quick Repulse is pretty much a must. And unless you're willing to sacrifice 2 slots and 50% of your health, Brash Assault is generally not worth your time. I liken Helbindi to be an infantry version of Xian, so I built him accordingly, giving him distant counter, thanks to his huge resistance, which can be made better by the way. He's more than qualified to take up ploys. Both attack and defense ploys will work nicely for him. One to give him essentially 40 to 39 defense and resistance, and the other gives him like 56 attack. Add that on top of his Byleistr, whatever. I can't speak Garlic Jr., so you're gonna have to forgive me if I mispronounce. It's truly unfortunate that there are no fighter skills for infantry. I suppose he could benefit from infantry bowls or rush though. I'm sure that's totally equal, yeah. But anyway, back to his Byleistr. It might sound a little weird since I actually do like the weapon, but I think it's a bit overrated. Now think about it for a second, okay? First, it provides only 4 to all stats, visible stats. These days, it's easy enough to get 6 to all visible stats, so 4 to all? Psh, why, that's just homeless infantry team from 2017 speaking. And second, this thing only works on odd turns, so if you were to take advantage of it in a full infantry team for whatever reason, you could end up with what happened at Sisui Gate, where Huashong kills a whole bunch of Alliance officers in turn 1, only to get punked by Guan Yu in turn 2. Then he dies. Now, it's not to say that the unique effect is bad or anything, I like it. And as a matter of fact, I think he'd be perfect for soloing grand hero battles or whatever if you're into that. Especially if you run something like even defense wave to help out on even turns. Hell, it'll probably even be better than that guy who makes solo videos of CYL Hector like it's an awesome thing. Psh. Yeah, alright, I'll be embarrassed if I have to use such a broken-ass character for something like that. All in all, Helbindi is one tough bastard. He can tank, he can ploy, but if you want him to take the initiative, you're better off asking someone else. At least until they release something for infantry to ignore speed. Or actually better not. Speed is in a weird place right now, but it's better that than to completely ignore it, essentially giving free stats to characters like Helbindi. Next up, we have Laegjarn. Since she's basically characterized by her weapon, let's talk about that one first. Alright, so, since there's still some confusion as to how this thing works even to this day, let me explain it once more. So how the Niu works is that it adds up the combined total of visible stats to enemy units you're fighting, and then gives you half of that to all of your stats. Say, for example, okay? One of the most common skills you'll see in the arena are currently the dual rallies. You know, those things that gives +3 to 2 stats, adding to a total of 6. So when you get into a fight with a unit with that buff, you'll end up getting 3 to all stats in combat buff. That's absolutely amazing, alright? It's like one of the coolest skills in the game. Just for the price of 1 enemy rally, all of a sudden you have a free fury. And that's just scratching the surface. If you were to run into a full enemy tactics team or something, you could end up hitting a maximum of 12 to all stats. And on top of all this, since these are in-battle buffs, you can stack all this with visible buffs that your team has. So you're looking at 18 to all stats. Oh, alright. What if you add something stupid, like Corin? Well then. Summoner bonus. Well then. Ally bonus. Well then. Then you have a completely overpowered monster with like 28 to all stats. And at that point, she'll destroy just about anything in this game. Of course, you could argue that the skill is situational. And it is. I mean, you have to rely on the enemies to use buffs. But again, rally is really common. It's not like using using White Hole to counter Dark Hole in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not like one card to counter one specific card. No, rally is very common. It happens all the time. You need it to score higher in the arena. And with Quan suddenly passing out +6 to 2 stats because of power creep, which I still don't understand. What the hell's the point of doing that? It's just so incredibly stupid. These guys are really desperate for money, and I don't know why. They're making so much money, and yet they still want even more. And it's like, I can understand making money, but, you know, at some point, you've got to cool down a little. You can't just keep piling on top of that. It's just, whatever. Anyway, so because of Quan giving stuff like that, you're looking at a really bright future if you invest on Laegjarn. Like I said before, Panic Ploy is a very valuable asset in this current arena atmosphere, and Laegjarn provides a unique take on how to counter these units. Now, as for how I build her, the cheapest option is obviously Fury. Even without a speed boon, thanks to her weapon and Fury, she can already hit 42 speed. And 45 if you decide to go for speed boon anyway, which is not a bad choice if you want to be sure against opponents that have no buffs. I've chosen the plus attack IVs for her though, because Laegjarn has the potential to be so fast that it's excessive. Well, I mean, Fury I guess is the second cheapest option now that I think about it. Her R-Flyer dueling is actually more than sufficient due to all the bonus stats she's already getting, with the HP actually providing her some pretty decent bulk thanks to her high speed. So you're looking at a unit that just has excessive speed. You don't have to even worry about it all that much. Plus attack is more than enough. Now you can also opt to take Swift Sparrow or Distant Counter or basically anything that isn't life or death. That should work for her. I only picked Fury this time because Laegjarn does have an Achilles heel in the form of her low resistance. I thought about giving her minus resistance at one point, but that Super Bane was just too much. Not to mention, having less HP makes it easier for her to hit Despacito after a fight. That being said, her B slot I have chosen is the standard Despacito. As a flyer, she has limited options, such as flyer formation and aerobatics, but Despacito will give you all the combat power you'll need. God is also a pretty good pick. Just don't run Dole Close or any Dole skills on her because that'll negate the effects of Niu. I've chosen Attack Smoke as her C. You can go with Defense Smoke if you somehow have Spring Alphonse, but Attack Smoke is honestly more than enough. This will allow Laegjarn to tank attacks on the enemy phase quite handily. And of course, finally, a plus 3 attack seal for the same reason I gave earlier. She has more than enough speed. You'll do chunks more if you have plus attack, and with the seal. I suppose you can also run stuff like Savage Blow to weaken the enemy threshold. That's another way you can do that. In conclusion, I think that Laegjarn is probably the strongest hero in this banner. Her powerful all-round stats and high speed gives her an incredible edge in battle. Alright, so the last hero of the Muspell General banner is Laevatein, also known as Alolan Selena, an alternative species of Selena that lives in Alola. Much like how it works in Pokemon, Laevatein is slower than her cousin, but packs a ton of attack as opposed to Kanto Selena's lowly base of 25. Laevatein's Laevatein is a blade that gives her even more attack, up to a total of 30. So, even with my defensive build shown here, can reach 92 attack in one go, without merges, allowing you to pretty much one-shot the majority of the cast. So for her, I decided to go for plus attack all the way. She'll do fine with plus speed, but I think her true strength lies in being a one-shot wonder rather than having to rely on follow-up attacks. I chose minus HP so that she can enter her Wrath threshold a bit easier. Much like with Selena Miku, I've chosen the Steady Breath as her A slot, because she doesn't even need to avoid doubles. Alolan Selena merely needs to stand there, take a hit, then all of a sudden, she can unleash her most powerful technique, Burning Atomic Blade, to completely annihilate her enemy in a counter. Now if you want to be extra rude, run 2 Infantry Pulse with Dragon Fang to upgrade into True Atomic Blade. Then there's nothing in this game that can survive your onslaught. Warding Breath will work too because Alolan Selena has a rather weak resistance. So this will allow her to counterattack dragons that threatens to take her out in one hit, and instead turn it around on them. I mean, you could also go with standard attack A slots too, like Swift Sparrow and so on, especially if you were to run plus speed, but I think that Laevatein is not quite suited for that role compared to others of her class. You could also be rude and run something like Distant Counter Advantage as well, though you'll miss out on spamming special techniques if you already overpower the enemy. You pretty much can just checkmate them, so it's a very deadly skill. Alright, now for B slot I've chosen Wrath to further boost her incredible damage. She'll be dealing with Burning Atomic Blade! You can also opt to use Special Spiral as well, which means that she can keep on pounding on enemies after enemies after enemies with the same technique even on initiation. However, Wrath can do the same as long as you're willing to wait a few turns. I mean, you never know, that 10 damage can be the difference between life and death. Still, with Special Spiral, you could just run an offensive A slot rather than Steady Breath if you have 2 infantry pulls handy. This will allow her to use her secret technique, Eternal Atomic Blade. However, such a technique requires an infantry pulse team, and that means you won't be able to take advantage of tactics. Still, I wonder, now that Special Spiral is out, I highly doubt that Vantage will ever be a seal now, because can you imagine, like, Special Spiral, Vantage, and Distant Counter? That's gonna be insane. There's nothing you can do about it, except unless you can ignore enemy counterattack. I guess that's something. But yeah, otherwise, that's pretty much insane. Anyway, as for the C slot, I chose Attack Smoke for the same reason as Laegjarn. It's much more affordable and allows her to tank additional attacks, which she's going to need to do anyway, since Laevatein does have a tendency of overdoing it. But you can choose Defense Smoke or Savage Blow if simply crushing the enemy further in one hit is your taste, especially if you run Special Spiral. So, once you have that set up, get a Dancer or 2 or 3, and you can pretty much just dunk everything to death. No problem at all. In conclusion, Alolan Selena is a far more offensive version than her Kanto variant. Where she misses in bulk and speed, she makes up for it in extreme power. Laevatein is a very dangerous unit on the field. However, she does have a really big weakness to Panic Ploy thanks to her low HP. Made even lower if you choose minus HP like me. She'll also have some trouble with her big sister if she doesn't have a secret technique handy, and even then it's a bit sketchy because Laegjarn has pretty high defense by default. And of course, if she ends up having to take hits, she cannot take too many. So these are her main weaknesses. Finally, we have our buddy Garen. A shadow of his former self in his League of Legends days, he is nonetheless still a dangerous foe. However, much like Helbindi, due to being infantry with low speed, he doesn't really have that much wiggle room for builds. Now, Steady Breath once again reigns supreme here. But, because of his wonderful breath, he could use Swordbreaker to achieve a unique niche in a dragon team in that he can actually fight and defeat Falchion users, except maybe legendary Marth and Qualm. See, with Marth, he could cancel Swordbreaker and any counterattacks and then hit you twice. But now that I think about it, you might still be able to survive due to having such high defense and decent HP. Not to mention, not being able to counterattack is actually a blessing in disguise, now that I think about it, because then he can't activate Fire Emblem from your counterattack. Either way though, if you survive, you can pay him back on your next turn. But Qualm? He's going to destroy you, and there's nothing you can do about it. However, if they're foolish and decide to choose the cookie cutter path of Alm with Windsweep that they heard from Game Press or something stupid like that, then they deserve to have their ass kicked by Garen's furious Ignis on the next turn, if he survives the attack, which he probably has a good chance of doing so. In fact, now that I think about it, if Garen chooses Deflect Melee, he can survive both those guys as well. Qualm is still kinda sketchy, but definitely win sweep on. Now, since Garen also has a high resistance score, he can deploy just as well as Helbindi. So guys like the aforementioned Marth and Alm are going to have a tough time trying to kill him if he runs attack ploy. And finally, just to be a bit rude, you could still run the quick repulse seal to deal with other threats like a regular dragon would. His tanking might suffer a bit by not running close defense seal, but I think he's tanky enough to take the 2 hits as long as he doesn't take an enemy skill on top of that. Well, and that's about it for my analysis of this banner, the dueling skills, and Garen all in one go. I thank you all for watching. Until next time.